Hi, you're listening to WRBH Radio, 88.3 FM. This is your host of New Orleans by Mouth, Chef Amy Sens. And here in the studio, we have a sweet and special guest, Mr. Will Samuels with King Cake Hub. He is a dear friend, and even more so a friend when he brings me a king cake for breakfast.
Yes, I brought snacks today.
So I love a king cake snack, and I really appreciate you being here in the studio today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I have to ask you, okay, Will, why king cakes? Why is this like your thing?
Why not king cake? Well, this has actually been the latest iteration of a very long process that we've done. And it started, I guess, back in 2011. We had a gelato shop in Omettery called La Dolce Nola that we opened up just after we opened up Pizza Nola. It was we had 24 flavors of gelato, and we opened up in mid-December of 2010. And we were like, well, king cake season was coming up. We should try making king cakes. And my wife, over the next couple of weeks, we was experimenting with some recipes and came up with something. And then January 6th, just a couple of weeks after we opened the gelato shop, she was able to debut this king cake. And she made them all. We were doing a goat cheese apple and a strawberry cream cheese and I think a praline at that point. And it was well received. We had a good little response. We weren't doing a ton of them, but we had a good customer base and people were really liking it. A lot of people said it was the closest thing to the original Mackenzie's.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we had a good little run. We won a couple of contests and awards and things. It got to be pretty challenging. So we had closed the gelato shop back in years or just blending together at this point, a couple of years after. And we were baking king cakes out of a commissary kitchen and also selling them at Pizza Nola. We figured since we had the restaurant, it was another perfect location for people to come and just get them in Lakeview. So it was, I think, 2014, and I was making all of the king cakes myself that year. We were working out of a commissary kitchen in Broadmoor. And it was a long carnival, and it was just grueling, and it was...
what time did you have to get up in the morning to make all the king cakes?
Probably 4 or something like that.
Wow.
It was nuts. There was actually one day that when the Super Bowl was here in 2013, and we had a big catering gig for that morning. We were doing the hospitality rooms and breakfast and lunch for... I guess I can say it, Matchbox 20 and One Republic that were playing in the arena that day for, I think it was the NFL, I forgot what event it was, but it was a big, big deal that we were working on that for several weeks. And so we had that day for Super Bowl that we had to get started super early. But Jennifer woke up even earlier to make a whole bunch of king cakes that morning. So I could never complain about being exhausted from king cakes because she just went through the ringer with making them. But it was a long season. And so we had our final bake on Bacchus Sunday. And so it was Lundi Gras. And we were like, well, shoot, we don't have a king cake for Mardi Gras. We have to figure something out. We had already done our last bake. We were already sick of our own king cakes at that point. And then we had tried one and we're like, wow, this is a good king cake. And so we started working with that business over the next few years at Pizza Nola, and then ended that business relationship. And we closed Pizza Nola last year. And as we announced that we were closing, Gambino's reached out to us and they said, hey, we'd love to be able to work with you for next year. We can get you as many king cakes as you need. And we were like, okay, that's cool. That's what we're going to do. And at that point, I was thinking, okay, well, there are other bakeries that I was really wanting to work with, some of just my own favorite bakeries. And over last spring, I just started reaching out to them and say, hey, this is a concept that we're thinking of doing for next year. We would love to get you involved in this. And they said, yeah, okay, yeah, we would do it. And then slowly over the last year, all these bakeries started coming on. And then we kind of gelled the concept into the hub, which actually one of the articles as we were closing had mentioned over the last few years, Pizza Nola has become a king cake hub for this other bakery. And we're like, okay, there's our name.
There's
King
your
Cake
name.
Hub. Yeah, it was a beautiful thing.
Well, and so, I kind of like the idea of King Cake Hub because so many people here in New Orleans will have a king cake party and they want to have a tasting and have a whole bunch of king cakes and different flavors and styles. And then to have to drive all over town and track them down.
Right.
I can go to one spot and have so many choices, and depending what day of the week, I can get a different one, but I don't have to like go out to Kenner or to the West Bank.
Exactly. I had a customer the other day, and he had a Coludas out of River Ridge. He had a Canadas from Homa, and he had a Hido and one other. And I was like looking at the king cakes and doing some calculations in my head, and I said, I just saved you 3 hours and 48 minutes of driving around, having all of these things in one spot. So yeah, so you don't have to go out to the West Bank, and you don't have to go to River Ridge and Homa to have all of that in one central location. And for us to be in the mortuary on Canal Street, so close, really the exact center of town, it just works out so fantastic for us, right off the interstate. In a great location. We're very, very lucky to be working with them, and it's just an absolute great location to be able to be.
Well, so who are some of the bakeries that you're working with? Like, tell us what king cakes we can get at King Cake Co.
So we have at the moment, when we're fully stocked, we have 35 different varieties, give or take. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. Like we actually have today from Bywater Bakery is doing a pineapple passion fruit king cake that we have today. Gambino's. One of the first to come on board, and they've been doing king cakes for 70 years now, since 1949. The king of king cakes, really the kind of the gold standard of this traditional New Orleans king cake. We have Hido Bakery on the West Bank. We have Canada's great grocery store out of Homa. They have 3 locations down there. We're the first ones to bring them into the New Orleans market, and they won the King Cake Festival in 2017. It's just a fantastic king cake. Bywater Bakery's on board. It's their 3rd season of making king cakes. They're doing a carnival, a chantilly cake, a buoy with this Cajun custard. It's just super, super good. We have Girls Gone Vegan for those who are needing the vegan and the gluten-free king cakes. And we have Coludas out of River Ridge. One of our kind of a last-minute addition for them, but we're really happy to have them on the team. And I think
Eat Fit.
We have the Eat Fit. We have the Ochsner Eat Fit. We also have Noka doing their Satsuma almond king cake. Very, very popular, and that benefits the school's culinary arts department.
Well, I think all these creative king cakes are interesting, and I'm not going to start a gumbo debate or a king cake debate or anything like that, but I will say I feel like as New Orleanians, we're not baking king cakes at home, right? We're stopping and we're getting them. We might bake one a season at home just to play or to have fun, but it's not the kind of thing that we're doing regularly. And I feel like because it isn't something that we have rules about at home about how to cook it, that we are more open to innovative king cake ideas. So in your mind, is there a rule? Does it just have to be a ring? Does it have to have something in it? Like, what are the rules of king cake?
That's a good question. I think that, I was going to say it has to have purple, green, and gold, but it doesn't, because the Noka is a galette de rye, and that, doesn't have the sugars. That's just your perfect puff pastry. What are the rules? That is a very good question, because I think that because king cakes provide the energy food to get through the marathon of carnival.
I like that.
Yeah, it is. I think that's what really carries us through it. That's our vitamin, because it is a marathon to get through the whole season. But and there are so many different ones that we carry. Like even the ones from Canada's, completely differently decorated. So it really doesn't look like your traditional king cake like you would get from the old Mackenzie's. Hido is more traditional like that with the sugars on top. And then you're getting the icings, and then you're getting the Bywaters that's just a complete round thing. And then when you're getting into the whole savory king cakes.
Yeah, I mean, heck yeah. I'm all about any kind of bread.
Right.
And I'm also about any kind of gravy. But, I feel like any kind of bread stuffed with things, I can probably get on board with it.
Yeah, Bywater's doing a crawfish goat cheese, as is Caven, which I've been really wanting to try. And there's so many different ones that are out there in the savory variety. I would love to be able to bring them into the shop. And there's some different ones too that we've been reaching out. Every year my family, we just try and experiment with as many as possible. Even though we have 34 varieties, we're still reaching out and trying new things. And there's some ones that we've tried this year. A shout out to Mayhew on on Nursery in Old Metairie. They open up at like 1 o'clock. They only have a very, very limited amount. There's a line, and it's a great king cake. I wish I could bring it into the shop, but it's super good. And then there's some others out there. We're always experimenting. I think at the moment we have 5 in my refrigerator in my house.
Well, are there any flavors of king cake that you've had and you're like, it's not my favorite, it might be right for somebody, or one that just has blown you away and you've gone, oh my God, I didn't know we could do that. This is so cool. Like, this is delicious.
Yeah. The Maggie one we had last week, it was out of control. It blew my mind. And also,
and was it traditional style, or did it have like
there was a filling inside, but there was a great glaze over it. It's hard to describe just what it was, but it was different. But it was just fantastic. Canadas, the Snickerdoodle. When I was reaching out to them to bring them on board, and they gave me a sample of this Snickerdoodle king cake. And that's what they won the festival with in 2017. That was just out of control. That was just, wow, this is incredible.
Over at Langlois, we were playing around with king cakes a couple years ago, and my chefs thought that I was crazy because I said, I want to stuff one with boudin, and I want to put like a Creole mustard cane syrup glaze on top. And they were like, ew, no. And so we made a traditional brioche dough, and I let everybody make their like cinnamon king cake. And then I stuffed one and I brought it, and we were like, oh yeah. Like, I mean, it's carb on carb, you know,
right.
with the boudin but, you know, there's something fun about, you know, carnival spirit. We do tend to challenge ourselves, whether it's in the floats, we're being sarcastic and silly, whether it's we want to see how long we can go carnival season
right.
and but before we catch the cold the day after Mardi Gras, right? And so I feel like king cakes are kind of like that. It's giving pastry chefs and even small grocery stores and bakeries an opportunity to challenge themselves and do something different.
Well, that's what we were hoping to do with this king cake coterie that we were offering. So we were offering a 9 cake, basically a king cake of the week club that we started on January 6th.
And I love that you use a fancy word like coterie.
We went back and forth on that. We went back and forth on whether to use coterie or not. And the only other time I've really heard that word being used is in the debutante coterie. And we had a lot of discussions. We were like, ooh, should we do it or not? Can people know what a coterie is? And then actually there was an SNL sketch of a parody of a Wes Anderson film called The Midnight Coterie of Sinister Intruders. And are like, all right, coterie could work. Because we did want to give it that kind of upscale,
like exclusive.
Yeah. And when I was presenting it to the bakeries, to the bakers to develop their submissions, I said, look, you can be as creative as you want to. You can come up with whatever you want. I said, I'm going to purchase this amount. We're going to have it. And it's just a chance to just come up with something wild and wacky. And they're running with it, and it's been exciting to see it and to give it that challenge. So what are some
of the wild and wacky cakes you have coming down the pipe, and what?
We have a chocolate cream cheese from Hido next week. Bywater was doing their pineapple passion fruit. Balestras, which won last year's King Cake Festival, they're doing a caramel crepes de leche coming up.
Ooh.
And then later on in February, Gambino's is doing a King Cake dough beige, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and you know what's really fun is that the coterie also gave you an opportunity to work with some of the smaller places, right?
Yes.
That couldn't keep up with the demand that y'all have at King Cake Hub, but they knew in advance, you know.
Right. To do it like a one-shot deal, for our main partners at the hub, we're asking for, a whole bunch of king cakes every day. So it's challenging for a baker to be able to keep up with their own. Cake Cafe, I would have loved to have brought them on because it's a fantastic cake. It's one of our favorites every year. But he said, no, I can't keep up with what we're selling out of the store. There's no way that we can be able to do another thing because it's a great cake. But some of these bakers, on a one-shot deal where, hey, can you do me, 50 king cakes? It works out well.